So welcome back to another episode and welcome to 2021. And I thought before I start my year of video games and talking about all that stuff, and I have a lot of stuff planned, I would talk personally about what really happened to me and my family in 2020. And I was kind of tight-lipped about a lot of stuff, and I really, before I move on in my life, I need to kind of get this all out of me. I really do. This is my therapy. And I want to say something. I'm not doing this for sympathy or for anything like that. I want to say that we're all doing great now. Everything's looking good. But it was the most trying year of my entire life, and I'm going to explain why. And you're going to be shocked because when I start telling you everything that happened to us this year and to people we know and all of that, you will think that I made this up. And let me tell you, none of it is embellished at all. In fact, I'll be playing a lot of it down to keep it from being too intense. And I'm going to share the honesty of the entire year, and it's intense. And it's really real and it's really raw, a lot of it. So stay tuned. I don't know how I'm going to do this. I'm just going to try. I got a few notes to keep me reminded of all the things. Because what happened is during the year, I started making lists of everything that was going wrong. And it ended up being 3 pieces of paper taped together because things just kept going on and on and on. Now, I know for so many of you guys out there as well, it was a trying, terrible year. I know. And I sympathize for all of you guys 100%. This is just my story. It's not meant to be more intense than anybody else's because I'm sure a lot of you out there have dealt with a lot more this year. That's how crazy it is. But in all of my life, I've been having this smooth sailing stuff, bumps and things like that, as we all do. And 2020, it started for me. And here we go. Let's begin. Let's begin with everything. The honesty of everything. Okay. So in the end of 2019, me and Kim were very, very excited that we were having a baby. And this was a wonderful thing and the best thing ever. And it still is. It's the best thing that happened in 2020. It's changed my life for the best. It's unbelievable. It's incredible. So here we begin the journey into the madness of my story. At the end of 2019, I went away to San Francisco and to do a movie screening, and I was coming back on the plane, and I've often said, I swear I went through a wormhole or something, because the world that I came back to was not the world that I left. When I was on the plane, I had this weird cough. I was like, every 10 seconds, and this is the end of 2019. There was no COVID talk. There was a little bit. Something was happening in Wuhan, China. Nobody really knew. It was kind of one of those things. Anyways, as I got to the airport, I landed in Vancouver. I was like, I started to feel really rotten, like really horrible. And so I came home, and Kim was up, and she's like, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you," because I was gone for a few days. And I hugged her and I said, "Oh, Kim," I said, "I am so sick." And she's like, "Really? What? Oh no." And I'm like, "I'm really sick." And then it just started to truly envelop on me. Now, to explain what happened is that this is something that I never do. I laid on the couch, and I was on the couch for 3 days. And I know you don't know this, but my friends know this, is that I if I have get-togethers, people always come over to my house and sleep because I can't go to anybody else's house and sleep. I can't sleep anywhere else. I can't sleep on a couch. I've never been able to in 46 years at that point, where I was on that couch for 3 days, hallucinating, hot and cold. This is going to sound crazy. At one point, I remember looking at the fireplace and I saw a giant praying mantis, and I'm like, no. I was pouring with sweat, and I was coughing and all of that. And I might say this, that it's pretty possible. I've dealt with some very big respiratory people in Vancouver since, and there's a big possibility I had COVID. A very big possibility. And Kim got sick, but she only got sick for a few days, where I got really, really sick. And here's where we begin the descent into madness and the beginning of it all. I'm on the couch. I can't get off the couch. I'm pouring with sweat. I'm just dying. And then all of a sudden, I hear Kim screaming, and I'm like, oh my God, oh my God. So I get off the couch and I go in to the bathroom, and I'm not going to get too graphic, but Kim, thought she lost the baby. There's a lot of blood, there's a lot of things. And we're like, oh my God. And I was already feeling so terrible. And I was like, trying to deal, with consoling my wife. It was the worst thing in the world. I mean, the emotion for people who have, lost their children in that way. I can't imagine. It's horrible. And so Kim, and this is where it starts getting crazy, had to go to the hospital on her own that night because I was way too sick. I could not even move. And so the good news there is she came back, and it turned out it was a placenta that had realigned or something. I'm learning about this stuff. I was learning about this stuff as we went along during the year, and that was a scare. But she came back at like 4 a.m, and she's like, "It's okay, everything's okay." I'm like, "Oh, thank God!" And then I could settle back into my sickness and all that. But that was the beginning of things getting really, really crazy. Now, we get into the beginning of 2020, and it was my birthday. And at this point, I had gone to the doctors, I got antibiotics, and he said, "Oh, what do you think you have?" And I said, "Oh, I think I have pneumonia." And he's like, "Why do you think you had that?" I said, "Oh, I had a big fever." And he's like, "Okay, it's before COVID as well." So he gave me some antibiotics, and I've been taking them, and I was near the end of them, but I was very weak. And Rob came over, I think it was January 11th for my birthday, and we sat up all night, and I was not well, but I had a bunch of drinks and tried to make it, into a fun thing for my birthday. And I was very low energy. In fact, I talked to Rob the other day, and he's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "When I think back to last year," he goes, "It was, you weren't good." But what happened is I was getting over pneumonia, COVID, whatever it was, and then all of a sudden, on my birthday, January 13th, it got really bad. All of a sudden, something else happened. At that point, I didn't know. All of a sudden, not only was I coughing my brains out and all of that stuff, still, for nearly a month at that point, I couldn't lay down, and I couldn't lay on my side at all, and I couldn't breathe. And I was just like, standing here going, You remember if I made that video? Remember that? I said my health or something? Oh my God. That was a hard video for me to make. But all of a sudden I couldn't lay down and all that. And I was, so that night on my January 13th, I checked myself into the hospital. And I went to the hospital and I was there all night on my birthday. It really was like, oh my God. I didn't want to be there. And I had every test in the world done. And there it was. I think it was 4 or 5 in the morning. And the doctor who was in charge of me that night in the ER or whatever, he said to me, he goes, "I don't understand." He goes, I've checked everything, your lungs, your everything looks fine. And I'm like, and I'm breathing like so shallow. I'm like, really? I'm like, something's wrong. I mean, and he's like, okay. He's like, I'll send you to some other specialists and stuff like that. So he did that. I go home. I can't sleep. I mean, I was sleeping, if I was lucky, 3 or 4 hours a night because I couldn't lay down. And every time I start kind of getting onto an angle, even like this is be too much. I was like, there would be no breath. I was like, ugh. Like I couldn't lay on my back. If I laid on my back, I'd be dead. I would have died. No joke. I was just like, if I lay back on my back, there was no breath. It was crazy. And so I was just like, what is going on? So for a week, I try to sleep and deal with this, and there's something's wrong, Kim. And she knows there's something wrong. I mean, I'm not no hypochondriac. I'm not like making stuff up. So I go back to the hospital. I get a different person, a different doctor. And he comes in and dealing with me, and I can see him. I'm standing there, and I'm like, and I'm thinking, he's looking at all my things, and he's like, I think he's thinking, what's this guy, really? He's like, listen, he goes, I've looked at everything. I've tested you again tonight, everything. You're totally fine, like physically. You're totally okay. He goes, I'm going to send you for some other things and all that. But here's the thing that would bake my noodle for the next 6 months. He goes, maybe it's psychological. And I was like, and I'm like, no. And Kim's like, no. And he's like, well, I'm just saying. He's like, because there's nothing wrong and all that. And anyways, he sends me off. I go home, and I'm like that for the next 6 months. But I had been sent to all these specialists to get, do all this stuff. I got, went in for my heart and all this stuff. All that was fine. And then I was getting in for the respiratory stuff, that was the stuff I needed. And then something happened. Then something crazy happened. COVID happened. All of a sudden, that kicked in. Lockdowns, all of that stuff. All of hospitals were shut down. I couldn't go to a hospital for the next 5 months or so. So I was... and the symptoms didn't leave me. Nothing changed. Nothing got better. There was no medication. There was nothing at all. I was sleeping like this every night, and I couldn't sleep. And I'd wake up after 3 hours going, and it was crazy. And so I thought to myself, is this psychological? I'd never had an issue like this in my life. I want to tell you, there's an answer to this, and it wasn't psychological. But you start getting in your own head, right? Like, have I been so sick, coughing and trying, being conscious of my own breathing that I'm that's sick, it is psychological. And I started, and Kim's like, John, no, you're not. It's not psychological. I'm like, yeah, you're right. It's not. And all that. And I had a hard time going to sleep every night. I was scared to go to bed, terrified to go to sleep. It was like, because I couldn't lay down. It was like, ugh. It's the worst feeling I've ever had, ever. I'm gonna fast forward, to this section. This is just the health section. We're going to get into all the other stuff, because the health thing is not it. That's not all the bad stuff. There's a lot of bad stuff to come, let me say. So finally, after after my daughter was born, and we're going to get into my daughter in a sec. After that, I finally got in for some tests, and I finally got in for some stuff, and I got to meet, I was already dealing with a specialist, and she's like, I'm going to put you onto a real good specialist, somebody who is the best of the best in Vancouver. I'm like, okay. And so all these people, doctors, nobody knew what was wrong with me. I was like, and at this point, I was actually getting better after 6 months or so of dealing with it. And so the woman phoned me up for a phone consultation. She'd looked at every single thing I'd gone through. She'd read everything and all of this. Very smart woman. She was really smart. It was great to talk to her. And she's like, and I said, nobody knows what this is. I said, it's just been crazy. And she's like, I know exactly what this is. And I'm like, you do? And it was like the heavens had opened up. Somebody knows what's wrong with me? And is it psychological? No. There's a long name to it that I don't have written down right now. But it was a post-viral infection that destroyed all of the nerves in my diaphragm. So the trauma that I had from coughing and all of that triggered a viral infection that destroyed all the nerves in your diaphragm that help you breathe like normally. Usually, you're not conscious of breathing. You're just doing it normally. Like, hey, I'm breathing. Yeah. It's like, you can take control mentally and all that, but mine were gone. So there was no help to help me breathe. So I had to be conscious to make myself breathe. Isn't that surreal? And she even said to me, she's like, I'll be honest with you. She's like, I've dealt with this once before. I never thought I'd see it again in a lifetime. It's so rare to happen. So I became a bit of a case study for her. So I went to the hospital when kind of COVID things had lightened up a little bit. And I went down and I did all these tests and all of that. And to be honest with you, I still have another 6 months to go to have, they have healed back, but for them to fully heal. I'm still not the same energy that I used to be, but I'm good. Listen, let me tell you, I'm super, super happy. And all of that. So that is the health thing. I've always wanted to explain exactly what happened in the end result. And I'm telling you, when I found out what it was like it wasn't psychological. And it was one of those weird things that was I needed a specialist to study my case and to figure it out, and who really knew respiratory. Like, that was her thing and all of that. So I got a chance to meet her and all of that. And she was fascinated by it. It was like, She's like, I can't even imagine what you went through in that first 5 months. She's like, I can't even imagine, especially with lockdown and all that. I couldn't get any. There's really, I think, not much they could have done anyways. The nerves have to heal back on their own. But what a weird thing to happen. I'm like, what, really? Okay, so that's the first thing, and that's taken us all the way through to now. But now let's start at the beginning as well. This is the one thing that I haven't really mentioned online. A lot of people, I've shown it on some pictures and things, but I'm just going to explain it. When we were doing an ultrasound when my daughter was being conceived in Kim. They did an ultrasound. They did a 3D ultrasound, and so we did that, and we came home, and all of a sudden we got a phone call. Well, Kim got the call. I was in the games room here. And all of a sudden, Kim came in, and she's like, "John," I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "I just got a call, from the people who just did the scan." I said, "Oh, yeah," and I just could tell. I looked at her face, and she's like, "Yeah, our baby's gonna be born with a cleft lip," and I'm like, "What?" And it was a shock to me, right? I was just like, it's like, okay, really, okay, and so for anybody who doesn't know what a cleft lip is, it's like when a baby is forming in her mother, or he or she, the last thing to form is right here. It's like the baby comes together in the womb and all that. And it's kind of like a zip. And at the end, for a cleft lip, it just doesn't zip up to the top. The baby's totally fine, in every other way, but this is not attached. It's kind of like a part and all that. Joaquin Phoenix has it, right? And so that was a shock, and it was like, what does this mean? And so there was a whole other thing that opened up for us. Not only was I going to be a parent, but I was going to have some extra challenges. And I wasn't upset about dealing with them. It was a case of like, what do we have to do? Because I'll do anything. And we have. And all of that. So that was a shock. And we didn't know to what extent. Then we had to see specialists. And then all of a sudden this other machine kicked in of things that all of a sudden when the baby's born, of all these things that we have to do and all of this. And it's like, whoa, okay, like this is something that was unexpected and all of that. So my life became full of meetings at hospital, at Children's Hospital, meeting the cleft lip team and all of that. Because I got to be honest, thank God we're in Vancouver, so we have that kind of help. We've got a great team here, and big props to all of them, big time. But it's still a shock, and they didn't know how severe it would be, right? So it could just be the lip, a little cut with the lip, and you have surgery on it later on to get it done, or they also said that it could go onto her soft palate, hard palate, all the way to soft at the back, creating kind of a hole. So that was a massive concern as well. And so, okay, I won't get into some things that happened with the like labor. I'll just say labor. When Kim went into labor, it was absolutely insane. Kim waited too long to go to the hospital. Not her fault. She didn't want to be sent back. And so I woke up to Kim absolutely losing her mind. It was like a horror movie. It was really, really scary. And I was worried that somebody was going to call the cops on me, thinking I was murdering my wife because Kim was yelling so loud. And I got in the truck. Kim was biting the seatbelt, and we got to the hospital. And Kim was screaming so loud, and she's just going, epidural. I'm like, yes, this is what we need. This is what we need. And so we arrived at 6 a.m. I wouldn't get home till 4 the next day in the morning. Like that's, you can wrap your head around that. This is a long labor. It was crazy stuff. So, long story short, we did labor all day. All that was fine. And then I don't want to be too graphic. But all of a sudden, when it came time to do the pulling out the baby, doing that, we're at that point, and I'm there with Kim the whole time. We're like just doing the pushing and all that, and all of a sudden the room just fills with people. I guess that's the normal thing that happens. I wasn't aware of this, so it was a bit of a shock to me. And so the doctor's there, and all of a sudden, I just remember we could go 1, 2, 3, and we pull the baby out. And I just see this whoosh of this baby go out, and not being too graphic, but I guess it is. I just saw blood, like shooting on the floor, and I was just like, and I'm like, I'm so bewildered. I mean, I'm still trying to keep it together and be strong. And I'm like, oh, that just must be part of labor. There is stuff that comes out. But it was like, it was going nuts. And all of a sudden, I just noticed that the doctor who delivered the baby just started like sewing or doing something, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, Dad, come over here," and they brought me over, and I got to see my daughter for the first time, and it was probably the most like I can't even say shocking moment of my life. That, oh my God, there's my baby. Oh my God. Like, she's so big. like she was in Kim. It was wild. And then, and it was just so, and she's crying, and it's like, wow, and all of that. And I think a lot of fathers weep, or they have that kind of emotion. I was more in like, whoa, man. I did a Keanu Reeves moment. I was like, whoa. And it was just wild. And then I got to see her cleft lip, and I was like, okay. And then I could see that it was inside her mouth all the way back, and I was like, okay. And then, so I'm dealing with all this stuff, and I look around, and then I see that the doctor's working on Kim. And long story short, when the baby came out, the baby tore Kim so badly, the way that they did it, that, like, he had to patch her up, and then he had to take her for a 3-hour surgery to fix it. It had gone so wrong, and all of that. And so, the epidural was going on, so thank God for that. And I'm the first one to change the baby's diaper, because the baby's on the other side of the room, and I was like, I'm changing this baby's diaper, and it was like, it's a cool moment for Dad. I could always say I changed the first diaper, and all of that. And then they finally, after way, way too long hours, they finally take him away. And then all of a sudden, this little nurse comes up. She's like, "Okay, I'll take you to your room." I'm like, "Okay." And then they're, we're reeling this baby up, and there's a little baby in front of him. I'm like, because I thought Kim would be kind of there for that first bit, and she wasn't. So we go up to this room, and and these two little nurses come in. Nice enough young girls, but they were young girls. And like, "Okay, you're gonna feed your baby," and I'm like, okay. And I'm so shaky from the day. I hadn't eaten and all. So I'm, oh yeah, okay. And I'm just like, I'm getting a bottle out. I'm like, and I'm like put formula in it, and then, since the baby had the cleft lip, like feeding isn't like feeding a normal baby. I'm like, I don't really know. They're like, "Oh, we'll show you," and they're trying to feed the baby. They can't even do it, because the cleft lip is a set of new challenges, right? And so, because it's on the inside and the outside, and then the other nurse is trying to do it as well, and she can't do it. And they're like, "Oh, okay." And they're like, "You know what? The specialist is coming in the morning, and so she'll be able to show you guys how to feed her and all that." And I'm like, "Okay." And they're like, "Yeah, ring us if you need anything." And then they're gone. And then this is the thing that's really, really weird, especially being a new dad. I know there's no roadmap, but because everything went so south, I'm standing in a room in front of a baby for 3 hours, and there's nothing I can do, and I can't sit down. You can't relax. And I'm so sick too. This is during it, right? I'm still dealing my height of my illness, and I'm like, whew, and I'm just like, oh my God, and it was, and I stood there for around 3 hours. And I was just so nervy, and so I was like just guarding the baby. Is the baby okay? Is the baby crying? Nothing's covering the baby's face. I just like sweating, and I was just like, and finally after 3 hours, they wheeled Kim in, and Kim had some nurse support and all of this, and so Kim's like, "Hey, John, go home. At this point, it's 4 a.m. The kind of next day. It's like, I've been there for, I don't know how many hours. It was an insane amount, like 24 hours, something, awake. And I'm like, okay, or whatever it was. And I'm like, she's like, go home. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, okay. And I get to the truck, and this is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to me. I get in the truck. I start it up. And then I just start shaking. I was just like, I think the day had finally caught up to me. I kept it together, but I was shaking. I was so shaky, and I should not have been driving. And I drove home, and I walked in the apartment, and I'm like, ugh, what do I do? I was so messed up and all of that. But let's get to it. Let's move this story ahead further. So we were taught how to feed the baby and do all of that, and and then there was all these other challenges that I'll lightly touch on here. This was I should say, it was very challenging. So after 2 weeks of the baby being born, we still had all these meetings at the hospital. So we had to keep putting the baby with us and bringing a newborn with us. It was hard. And we're new parents. We'd never had a baby before. It was all so shocking and all this. And the cleft lip thing took it to a different level. So we had to kind of like grow up real quick as parents. We couldn't just be like, oh, the baby, you know, like we had to, we leveled up, as I like to say. We really, really leveled up. And so we had to get a prosthetic put into her mouth. We had to go drive to North Vancouver every single week to have it adjusted. So it was a prosthetic put into her mouth to cover the kind of the hole there so she could eat properly. And so we had that, and then we had to tape it onto her face every single day. And putting a little prosthetic into a baby's mouth, and she's screaming, and you're trying to tape it up. Me and Kim were pouring with sweat every day doing it because you had to change it every day. It was hard. And then just as we were getting used to that after a month or two, all of a sudden they had to put in the nose stint. So there's this nose thing that's going up her nose as well to keep her nose up until she had her operation, her first operation. And so it was hard. It was hard. It was hard. It's probably the hardest thing we've ever dealt with in our lives. But we did it for our daughter. And we did it every day. Every day we did the taping and prosthetic in the mouth and all of that. And it was really hard being a new parent and having to have this extra challenge, you know. And hey, there's a lot of parents out there with way more challenges. I'm not saying, I'm not competing. This is not what it's about. I'm saying this is just my story. And so, yeah, so eventually, I'll end the story with my daughter, is that we did that for until I think, I can't even remember, like 5 months we did that for, 4 months we did that for. And then she went for surgery and she got her lip done. And that was hard too. Having your, like a little baby going for surgery is a tough thing. And so that was another terrible thing that happened this year. But it was for the greater good. And hey, let me say some positive too. The surgeon, after she did the surgery, wonderful, intelligent woman, she says to me, and Kim, obviously, she goes, guys, she's like, you guys did a great job with the taping. Great job. And the taping was to bring the lip together, right? That was also part of what it was about. So we had to tape it really tight to bring the lip together. So when they did the surgery, they're amazing with microsurgery these days. They're incredible. And she just said, you guys did so well with the taping that when I went to do the surgery, I didn't even need a nose stint. Her nose was up on her own. And she's like, that's all because of what you guys did. And it was just like, yeah, it was hard, but we always knew we would do it for our daughter, for her future and all of that. And so that was some really great news. And my daughter still has another surgery to go for the roof of her mouth. I think that's in 3 months' time or something, and that's the last surgery for around 6 years. So that's a positive thing. And let me say, my daughter has come into her own, and she's crawling around. Like I put a little video on my Instagram where she was crawling for the Ninja Warrior soundtrack. It's really great stuff, and we love her more than life itself. I mean, I never thought I could love something as much as my daughter. I'd never, I love Kim. And more than anything as well, but I think what is so cool is like the love that I have with Kim, is the approximation of our daughter now. Our daughter is our love. It's kind of, I know it sounds cheesy to say, but it's true. It's true. And you know what? Every day is a challenge, and it's interesting. It's hard, and all of that. But my God, it's so fulfilling. I never thought having a child would be as fulfilling as it is, and it's been. That's the one thing in 2020 that is super fantastic. Now, okay, I've got those two things out of the way, my daughter and my health. Now we talk about all of the other things. Yes, I know, I'm sorry. This video is continuing. I know. I've got them written down here as well. Oh my God. Never mind, hey, all while we were doing all of that, there was the coronavirus. Right? So the lockdowns. And sometimes when we went to the hospital, only Kim could go in. I mean, those are the other challenges. Frustrating. Okay, yeah, like like okay, these are. I'll say, yeah, these are. There's so many, and they're not in order because they all happened out of order. When my daughter, just before my daughter was born, the worst thing in the world happened, and I did a little, I did a new Game Stuff episode, and I did a tribute to him. But I know this, my hair cutter, a really good friend of mine, died of cancer. And it was a shock because we didn't see it coming. I'd gone to him for 12 years since the very beginning of the show. And he was also in the Happy Console Gamer movie, Philip Blackburn. And he cut my hair about 266 times. And he was like my therapy, man. I mean, I could talk about him for about an hour. And I won't because I think it would actually make me upset. So I won't. All I'll say is this. In my time on this planet Earth, I've met a couple of magic people, real magic people. They have real magic around them. Philip was one of those people. He was so magical. A person I've never, him and his family had traveled the world. He was a world traveler. He took his children to 21 countries before they were 21. So worldly. I'd experienced so much, and a free spirit, man. He was, I guess, a bit of a hippie, but a pirate hippie, and beyond that. And we'd always have these fun conversations, and he'd always be joking with me. He's a British guy as well, right? So I really related to him through that. And anyways, I could go on and on about Philip forever, but it devastated me when he died, and it was hard because my daughter had been born at that point. And then I was dealing with the grief of Philip dying. I hadn't dealt with grief that bad since my own father had died. It still hurts me to this day. I don't think I'll ever get over it. I used to love going for haircuts, and it wasn't about the haircut. It was to hang out with Philip and have a laugh, and in the studio there. It was awesome. It was great. And we talked about life, and he gave me a lot of advice about being a father and stuff like that. But his thing was, he didn't have to give me advice. We always arrived at these conclusions together. But okay, lost Philip. That was a bad one. I'll just say this. This is all this year. This is all in 2020. Kim's grandfather had a stroke. This is all during this time. It's wild. It's after her daughter. It was just all this stuff. And so he was in the hospital. Nobody could visit him. It was like, oh my God. And I want to say he's doing a lot better now. He has recovered, but still, it's adding on to the year. Kim's, the guy that she worked for, has a brain aneurysm while he's, with his family out hiking. They were off doing their thing, and he had a brain aneurysm. Had to be airlifted to the hospital. I was just sitting there. We were just sitting, looking after a baby, doing our thing, going, oh my God, what next? It was just one thing after another. Let me just say he's recovered from that. Let me look at my I have to look at here to see what else happened. My mom's best friend in England, of 50 years, died. It was just one thing after another. This is what I talked about. It's just shocking how many things would happen. Never mind, as you know, also, when my baby was born, Rob falls off a ladder, shatters his foot and ankle, completely destroys it. And still to this day right now, Rob, more than likely, looks like he's going to lose his foot. They're pumping him, full of antibiotics, but it looks like he's going to lose his foot. There's that too. Let me see. It keeps on going. I'm just looking through my list here. Yeah, I'll just mention this one. My uncle, my dad's brother, is fighting cancer as well right now. That was also what was happening through this year. He's doing chemo. I talked to him about a month ago. That was hard. He was there for Christmas in the early 90s with me and my family when E3 came out. And so I've got a lot of fond memories of my uncle. And so I want him to keep battling That's also going on this year. Now we get into the superficial things. The things that are just maybe because of the coronavirus or not. My favorite bar in Vancouver, it was a Dungeons and Dragons style bar. It was called Stormcrow Tavern. Because of the coronavirus, they shut down indefinitely. I had so many great times going there with friends and family. It was truly a loss. And, it's just like you're dealing with all the real things, the real issues. And then these things kept going on, these little things. There was the forest fires that came up from Portland and all of that stuff. And so we had a little baby here. We had to close all the windows. The air was unbreathable for days and days. I think it was like 4 days. It was horrible. That was just another. These are just the little things adding on to it, eh? Yeah. And here's one. So, I'm getting the hang of being a dad as best you can, right? And I get Kim sleeping on a night, and I'd have the baby in the other room looking after her. And so I had the baby sleeping. I'm sitting there and I'm just kind of watching TV or doing something. And all of a sudden my phone goes. It's like ding, 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 ding. I'm like, what the heck's going on? And all these people are writing to me, hey, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? I'm like, of course I'm fine. Why? What's going on? They're like, well, the fire. I'm like, the fire? I said, what fire? 5 minutes from me. 5 minutes from me down the road, there's a huge pier that they built, hand built. I mean, it's massive for walking. You can ride your bikes along it, all this stuff made out of wood. On fire, not a little fire. Let me say this: the whole pier burned down. But they're all texting me, and I'm like, oh my God. So I had to wait for Kim to finally wake up, and I said, listen, I'm gonna go do a reconnaissance on this. I gave Kim the baby. I put it because I thought, if it's 5 minutes down the road, how bad is this fire? I went down. It was bad. It was really bad. The air was insane. It was like crazy. Fire trucks down the road, pier, cops blocking everything, so nobody could get into the pier. And I'm like, oh my God, and you couldn't breathe. And we had to deal with the smell of that and the air for that. I had to close all the windows for days. So I was breathing, and it was the middle of summer. It was summertime. And that turned out to be an arson. Eventually, they found the person who did it. What an insane load of stuff. There was that. Now, here's two other superficial ones as well. We're lucky in Canada. We still have Toys R Us. I feel for everybody in the States who's lost Toys R Us down there. But we still have Toys R Us up here. It's doing well in Canada. My local Toys R Us, the one that I've gone to since I was younger, me and Rob, we called it Starbase TRU. When we used to play our Star Trek game in my old car, we would go to Starbase TRU, and that was the one we would go to. We'd love this one. I'd always go to it every couple of months or something. I'd always go to that Toys R Us. I guess the land got bought to build apartment buildings, and so they had to let the lease go, and so that got torn down. So I went in for the last few days before it got taken down. I bought one last Transformer, to remember that moment. And I took a picture of myself outside there. And I was like, oh man, that closed down. And I was like, oh, losing a little bits of history there. And then here's one. A lot of people might say, well, this is a good thing. I get why people might say this, but for me, no, because it was the last of my local EBs. My local EB closed as well. I made a video about a year back saying the writing is on the wall for EB. Life is coming for you. And listen, I've had my problems with EB. Oh my God, more so than anyone at times. Selling my pre-orders, the stupid stickers back in the day. Couldn't stand it. But there is something wonderful about going into a store and buying video games and talking to people, and there's a little bit of merchandise. I got some really kind of neat things out of there. And I'd already had a local EB, and that had closed down, right? And then I adopted this new one, and I've been going there for maybe the last 5 years, five and a half years I've been going there. And I go in, and it was really kind of nice. It was really nice because I would go in, and I remember, getting recognized by the staff for doing the show. I mean, it was and so I felt kind of at home, and I was like, it's a really nice place to show up, and I started developing an atmosphere and something I enjoyed. And so I really enjoyed that EB, and then I just got a call that my Fire Emblem, pre-order had been moved to another store, and I was like, that means they're gone. I've had that happen before, and yes, they're gone. And I'd gone in there a month and a half before that. I asked them how they were doing. They said they were doing great. So I don't know what happened. Who knows? So that is my 2020. That is my story. And that's the story that I wanted to come in and talk about today and be very, very honest. Because for me now, I can move forward and leave all that craziness in the past and psychologically move forward, because it was always like this. So I want you to know, like, doing the show was so hard for me in 2020 because I didn't want anybody to see behind the scenes what was really going on. I hinted at things, I did, because I'm not shipping for sympathy. I'm just telling my story. I'm over it. I'm past all these things. I'm moving forward, but I needed to do this to psychologically do it. This is my therapy. And I hope it wasn't too negative and too intense for you, because I was like saying to Kim, Kim, was in the other room with the baby, and we put the baby to sleep. And I said, I think I'm going to go shoot that video. And I talked to her about it beforehand, and she was totally okay with me doing it. And I think, it's also something from my history. I can always look back on this and go, all this stuff happened this way, and I have it kind of, together. And there's a lot of other things as well. But that's the main chunk of it, my 2020. So I think I'm done. I'm done with 2020. 2021, I'm looking forward to. I'm really looking forward to it. All the new games, all the brand new times, and the excitement with my daughter moving into a brand new year. That is for sure. So I hope you're all well in 2021 and that you're all, things are going good for you guys out there, because I know it's been a trying time and we're still not out of a few things, but let's have a bit of hope, shall we? So anyways, guys, until next time.